Hi, it's Isabel, and as you might have noticed, Halloween and spooky season in general are kind of my favourite thing. So, of course, I had to bring you some recommendations for books that I think are perfect to read on Halloween. All of these are, of course, kind of creepy and spooky, but they're also rather short because I thought it would be fun to give you recommendations for books that you can actually read in one day or maybe night during Halloween. And as it happens, all of these books also feature some sort of supernatural creature, sometimes even multiple of those, because two of the books that I'm going to recommend are actually short stories. So let's start with the one that isn't short stories, but instead is a classic. I was of course tempted to recommend to you the obvious classic for this season, which would be Dracula by Bram Stoker. But it is kind of long and also, just as I said, a very obvious recommendation, so I thought I would go with a different vampire classic and instead recommend to you Carmilla. Carmilla was actually written before Dracula, so I found it really interesting to read it, also in terms of seeing how the ideas about vampires developed. It's also a lot shorter than Dracula, and it features a female vampire and also a female victim. And I thought that aspect of the story was also really interesting to read about. And when I first read it, I actually did read it in one night. It doesn't take too long. And I think reading the whole novella in one night is a really fun experience because it is kind of suspenseful, and of course, living in our age, you kind of know what to expect from vampire stories, but still it's fun to kind of race through this story and experience it all in one night. And it does make it more creepy if you read it in the dark. It's not particularly terrifying, but it does have, I think, a fitting atmosphere for Halloween. The next book I have to recommend is also kind of a classic, though it is more of a modern classic, and as I said, it is a short story collection, and it is The Bloody Chamber by Angela Carter. And I absolutely love this collection because it is fairy tale retellings and kind of fairy tale-like stories by Angela Carter. And she just has a way of writing that is very beautiful, and her stories always have kind of unexpected twists, which are a lot of fun to read. I think the best story in the collection probably is the title story, The Bloody Chamber. I think it's also the longest one in the collection, and it is a Bluebeard retelling. Bluebeard was a figure that married women and then they all mysteriously died, and then he had like the next wife until she died, etc, etc. And in The Bloody Chamber you follow, I think, his fourth or fifth wife as she like gets to his remote castle. And yeah, if you know the story of Bluebeard, you probably kind of know what to expect, but I still think that the ending will really surprise you. A friend of mine also recently reminded me of a different story in here. Let me see what the title was. I think it was The Lady of the House of Love, and that story actually features a female vampire as well, so it would kind of fit with Carmilla. But I think it is quite an unexpected, again, vampire story. And I just love the fact that you're never quite sure where Angela Carter is gonna go with the story, and they also all have a really great atmosphere to it. The whole collection is quite short, so it would be absolutely doable to read the whole collection in an evening, or maybe you just want to read one or two stories to kind of get into the spooky mood on Halloween. The last book I have to recommend is also a short story collection, but probably not quite what you would expect, because it is also a graphic novel, and it is Through the Woods by Emily Carroll. This one also has fairy tale, folklore inspired stories in it, and the artwork in here is absolutely stunning. Let me show you some examples. For example, this page I find absolutely horrifying, and there are a lot of illustrations like that, and they are kind of really beautiful but also kind of terrifying at the same time, and that's what I really love about this collection. And I think it contains 5 stories, some of them clearly based on like known fairy tales, some of them I think are more like modern fairy tales, and because it is a graphic novel, it's of course really quick to read, but I did really like reading through this and being kind of creeped out, not only by the stories but also by the illustrations. And I might actually reread this one for Halloween myself. And that was it for my recommendations of short spooky books that you might want to read on Halloween. If you want to get more recommendations for spooky books, I did a video all about haunted house stories a while back, so I will link that in the cards somewhere up here or up there, so you can check that out, because I think all of those stories would be absolutely fitting for the season as well. But that was it for today. I hope you will have a wonderfully spooky Halloween, and I will hopefully see you in my next video. Goodbye!